Welcome, everybody, to this next episode of the JSS Podcast. I am your resident finance bro, Byron Enriquez, the casual executive, guiding you through real estate investing and all the things in between and some mortgage stuff. Um, Today, I want to talk a little bit different. We just got through Halloween a couple days ago, and as I was trying to come up with some topics of what to talk about today, uh, the topic that I wanted to talk about was, how do we identify opportunities in real estate, and how we find the right properties to invest in, and how do we find just things that could help in the market. So, and in that space, I just kind of went down some weird little rabbit holes. So I'm going to mix in some fun stuff in there that I kind of came across. And we were just talking about identifying the right properties, right, to invest in, and there's different tricks and different tools and different ways to be able to identify that. But it got me thinking, um, what about like those very unique, specialized properties that we come across? I've had the opportunity, been in this business now for, like I said, a little bit over 20 years. Have come across some very interesting properties, from the bottom of the barrel, scary property where you don't know what you're getting into, to the extremely over the top, just quintessential McMansion, or just that way over the top influencer type mansion that you see on TV. So I've kind of a little bit into both of them. So I kind of want to share a little bit about those, and just kind of get into how we're finding these right opportunities, right? So as you're looking in this business, and as you're looking for opportunities to invest in, I've always said one of the things that I preach is your profit is going to be made on the purchase, right? If you're getting a good deal, if you're identifying the right property, um, and in that space, there's different types of things you can be looking for, right? You can be looking for properties that you can expand on, properties that you can add ADUs on, zoning changes, things that if a market's coming up. Meaning, like Inglewood, for example, here in California, if you knew that SoFi Stadium was going to be built, that the surrounding areas were great investment opportunities. And there's little pockets of investment opportunities nationwide where it pops up, where hey, there's going to be some new infrastructure, there's a new mall coming in, new transportation. Right now we're seeing a problem with density, and we're seeing some problems with housing availability. So one of the things that there's these zones that are being that the government will put out some tax incentives for people to be able to invest and create opportunities in these zones where, like, for example, if there's train stations, or if there's metro stations or things like that, or public transit, that they're going to allow, and they're going to be able to fast track some permits and be able to fast track some higher density building, meaning a lot more apartments, or cheaper housing where you can put more people in there. But it got me thinking again, like I said, what about like those stigmatized properties, or those haunted properties, if you will, right? It's Halloween, we just got through Halloween. So what do you do then, right? And sometimes you can get great deals. There's some opportunities where you can find these properties where yes, somebody may have passed away in the property, and there's some disclosure issues to that, and we won't get too much into that because every state's a little bit different, what disclosure issues are required. But how do you feel? How would you feel about buying a property where maybe someone had passed away? Maybe someone, and then within that, how did they pass away? I know that's a big thing. We just I was helping somebody out about a year and a half ago or so. Um, and in one of the disclosures that we got into the property, it said somebody had passed away, and the property was being sold a little bit below market because of that. So how do I identify, is that something that's going to be good for my client? We dug deeper and asked some more questions. Excuse me. Was it a violent death? Was it natural causes? Was it, what was this? What was the reasoning behind that death? And you get to it, and you break it down, and it makes sense. But there's some times where you don't, right? That it will be an issue either for your reselling, or if you're going to rent it out, and your disclosure process. Will somebody want to rent it out, even though you may be getting a good deal about that? I know I was hearing a story once, and I know everybody's kind of heard some variation of this, where, a realtor found, guys, as we go through these properties sometimes to clean them up and get them ready to show, they found one of those creepy dolls in there, at an open house, and they just could not seem. I think it was somebody else playing a joke on them, one of their coworkers, but they could not seem to get rid of that kind of weird, crazy, creepy doll. So, there's a lot of things in there. And there's, what, there is some people that's what they're looking for. Also, there's a whole, and not just for stigmatized properties, but properties where celebrities, have lived in, or, oh, this was the first home of, such and such, if Elvis lived here, or whatever it may be. Those are, properties that sometimes fits into the neighborhood, and it may be a standard, 3 bedroom, 2 bath house, or whatever it may be. But just by adding that extra layer, you can, add some extra value to the property, just because, it meets that, oh, it's a desirable property, just because it brings that nostalgia to it, right? I mean, we're all familiar with that old TV show from the 80s and 90s, Full House. There's that house where they filmed those shows in, or not where they filmed it, but that's where it was just the facade of that house. It's out in San Francisco, and there's people, just go to that property daily, thousands and thousands upon people, just want to take a picture in front of that house. So, it's a property that could get extra value, or bring you an extra, higher price point, if you will. The Brady Bunch house, that from another TV show that just went on the market a few years back, and it was a bidding war, and it, people paid way more than that house was worth, because it was the Brady Bunch house, right? So those are different things that you can be looking at, when you're trying to, identify properties that you can invest in. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I've been through some properties. I remember there was a property that we went into. Unfortunately, this was, about 20 years ago or so, in 08, 09, in the last market bubble, and when the market had crashed. And one of the things that I was working on was helping banks uh, uh, sell their distressed assets, meaning properties that had been foreclosed upon. So I was called upon where I would get an address, and the bank was like, "We don't know who's there, if anybody's there. We don't even know what the property looks like. We have no information about it." And they would just give me an address, and they would say, "Here, go find out what's going on." And then, then my job was to create a report of what it needed to be able to be sold. How do we rehab it, or just different things, right? Every bank had different requirements. But I remember going to this house, and, sometimes it would be part of having to evict people, or help them move. But I remember I got to this house, and I knock on the door, nobody's there, and it's quiet. The door was unlocked, or actually, no, the bank had given me a set of keys that should have worked. So I was able to open the door, got in the house, and as soon as you walk in the house, it was just spotless. But that, not, hey, we did a good job cleaning, spotless, but like, we're cleaning something up, kind of spotless. It had that smell of bleach and fabuloso, and, just that weird aroma of something's not right here. Walked through the whole house. There was nothing, nothing. It was just literally spotless. And then I get to the garage. The garage is completely empty, except for one trash can sitting right in the smack in the center of the room, which I thought was a little bit odd, given the scenario of the whole rest of the house. I go over there to try to move it, and there is literally dead weight in the trash can. I cannot move it. It's just heavy, and I'm just like, something's off. I slowly lift up a little bit, and this aroma, never experienced it before, and have never experienced it since then, hits me in the face. To this day, I can't tell you what it was, because I instantly closed that, and I ran out of that house and never went back. Told the bank, "Hey, something's up. Find somebody else." Was not for me. But I don't know what happened. Right? Could have been nothing. Could have been a pile of rocks. Could have been somebody in there. Who knows? Right? Um, But that's one of the things I came across. I came across another one where similar situation where, the bank gives me an address, go knock on the door. Um, there was somebody still living there, and they were not very happy that the bank was there to have them move. So I had 5 chihuahuas chase me down the street. So you see me with a clipboard and just this guy just running down the street, running away from 5 little chihuahuas. So I'm sure it gave the community, the neighborhood, a nice little laugh on that. But you know what? I've also been through the complete opposite of that, right? I was a few years back, and I won't get into the who it was or which property it was because it's kind of public out there, and it was in the news and magazines and whatnot. I got approached about this one property that was being sold, very exclusive pocket here in California and Los Angeles, the Hollywood Hills area, just super, super exclusive area, where, properties there range in, 25, 30, 40, 50, $100 million. It was a developer who had been developing this property. His goal was to make it the most expensive property ever sold, ever in the world. Just the most expensive property ever sold. Didn't accomplish that, but he was there. So I was asked to do like a hard money private loan. He had been building it from scratch, from ground up, and he had run out of funds, and needed to make some moves happen because his loans were due. Needed a little bit more time to be able to sell it and get his certificate of occupancy to be able to sell the property. But his property had uh, 2 helicopter pads, had a nightclub, had a bowling alley. I think it was 6 swimming pools in the house, beauty salon. I mean, you name it, it had it. The property was, I want to say it was 35,000 square feet. This is just the residence. So I've been to properties where just the wallpaper in the house is worth more than somebody's houses. I was looking at another house that I was helped finance, that just the wallpaper in the house, I believe, was $250,000 worth of wallpaper in the house, something crazy like that. They had flown in from Italy. They had flown in olive trees in from Italy to put in the courtyard of this house. We've been around it all. You've been around it all, but how do you navigate through those? Uh, how do you navigate through those examples to find proper investment, to find good investment opportunities, right? you know where are you looking? Are you door knocking? Are you, if you're this is something that you want to focus on? I don't feel that maybe just going through the MLS is always the best option, because most properties that go on the MLS, you're competing with everybody. But how do you get in front of it? And I think, yeah, it's a good opportunity to be able to speak to some knowledgeable agents that to represent you. But takes a lot of legwork. There's different websites. There's Zillow, there's Redfin. Obviously, everybody knows about those. One of the things that I always say is, if you're interested in investing in a certain pocket or a certain neighborhood, become an expert in that neighborhood. Know the schools, know the transportation, know the trends. When a house goes up for sale, you know about it. What does it sell for? What has been done? Do these neighbors put in a pool? Is this a model? There's certain pockets where oh, most homes are different models of the same. There's maybe 4 different models. Oh, which model is this? What are those going for? What has been done? Do these have the extra garage? Has a tandem garage. Become an expert in that market, so you know exactly what you're getting, so that when something is potentially going to go on the market, you're either the first to know, and you know what it should be going for, right? You know what it can go for. And then identifying those properties that maybe have a little bit of, uh, you know, haven't been maintained properly, or that the rest of the neighborhood is adding an ADU and they're adding value in a certain way. What to do to those specific properties, so that you can come in with a game plan. The worst thing that we see is somebody who doesn't really know the market, doesn't understand what they want to do to a house to make it sell successfully. They think, oh, I'm just going to flip a house. Well, there's a lot more to that, right? What's your material costs? But mainly the vision. We're not getting into all the specifics of the financial aspect of that today. I just wanted to kind of keep it a little bit light, and how do we identify what are the things you're looking for? You're looking for zoning changes. You're looking for Or is it in a city where, here in California, we're allowed ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or granny flats, or can you put in a second unit or a third unit? What opportunities can you convert to add value to that property? Or is it just something that has deferred maintenance and they haven't, just needs paint, carpet, new appliances, you know, uh, new windows, new doors, some landscaping. That's what you want to, that's the approach you want to take. But being able to identify which one of those, but knowing that market, knowing what those properties go for, and then really becoming somebody in that neighborhood, in that community, so that you're knocking on doors. Hey, you know what? Would you be interested in selling your property? I know it's a little 1984 to say that or to do that, but those are the people that are being successful, the people that are being aggressive. If you're waiting for an opportunity to hit you in the face, you can be waiting for a long time. Right now, the way the market has shifted and changed, it's hard. Those properties are not so easy to find. And when one of those does come up, there are multiple offers and you're competing with a lot of different investors and some really deep pockets. And then when you do that, you start chipping away at the potential profit, and then it's nothing left, right? So it's being able to find something that you're not getting into competition. Back in my days and things when we got started, there was auctions were a big deal. I know a lot of people aren't necessarily going to auctions anymore. There's not. It's a whole different approach, and I can make a whole episode on just how to invest going through auctions. But there's online auctions now. Again, there's door knocking. It's buying lists of distressed properties, people who are late on their taxes, people who are late on mortgage, people who have notice of default filed on the properties, and that there's a potential for foreclosure. There's a great opportunities. One of the things I always say is there's a human element to this that you can't forget, right? There's a humanity to it where if somebody's losing their home going through foreclosure, it's a difficult time. They're going through some challenges, so they have a family. So, if I, at least I've noticed that I've been most successful in situations when I'm come across a situation like that, where you're showing some compassion, you're showing some empathy, you're being able to have a conversation where, hey, look, I know you're in a bad situation. How do we make the best out of a bad situation? You're going to lose the home. How can we help that transition a little bit smoother? Can I put a little bit of money in your pocket to be able to move to a better place or a different place without being so strapped? Being able to identify that and don't not forgetting that humanity part of it. I think that makes a huge difference. And you know what? It's not always about money. It's not everything. It's not about money. You're gonna make it. And it's sometimes if you make $5,000, $10,000 less, but you were able to help this family move to the right direction, those more opportunities will open up and you're going to make it up on the next one. And sometimes that makes the difference between you being able to close that deal and sell them on you being able to buy that house off of them, than somebody else who's just writing a check, right? And some hedge fund writing a check. So that makes a huge difference. Some of my best clients, I got this realtor out there he is a hustler. He's out there day in and day out door knocking. He goes door to door and he's saying, especially the properties that look like they haven't been maintained in a while. And and you come across an elderly couple who maybe has nobody else. And sometimes they're just sitting there, just letting the property fall apart, and sometimes it's, what if I can buy this property off of you? We'll bring it back to what it should be, the shine that it could have. And maybe put some money in your pocket to go maybe to a facility, and sometimes people don't know that that's an option for them. And I'm not saying take advantage of the elderly whatsoever, but those are opportunities, right? Where you know uh, you know I get asked all the time, well, what should be look what are triggers and what are different things that you can look for? And the triggers are the pretty standard ones, right? The NOD list, so notice of default, so people who are in default going into foreclosure, divorces, of getting plugged into a divorce attorney or the courts and being able to see who files for divorce. Again, difficult not to be predatory, but those are opportunities. People who are going through a divorce are most likely going to be dividing assets, so they're going to be most likely selling the house so that each partner can walk away with their portion. When there's deaths and there's probate court, when somebody doesn't have a trust or a will and the property's in probate, a lot of times not saying you're gonna take over the property, but there's some people who will need the funds to be able to buy out their family members, or different things of that nature. So, or maybe just, hey, you know what? Let me buy the home from you. Everybody can settle up. Everybody gets their cut. So those are things that you can look for. Obviously look at homes that are damaged. Fires, floods, and knowing that what you're getting into, and you're going to get into a property that has a lot of damage, and how do you fix it up? But again, you can potentially find good opportunities in those, right? And then the best part, the best thing obviously is trying to find up and coming neighborhoods. There's so many, neighborhoods around Los Angeles and Ventura counties, a lot of the outskirts that are, just now starting to mature and develop, and being able to find some properties that maybe need that extra little kick to get them into that next phase. And there's in real estate, we're always looking at different levels of buyers. We're looking at, there's an entry level buyer, which is buying your first home. Interesting fact, I actually just read this morning about that. The average age for the first time home buyer in the U.S. right now is at 40 years old. Crazy number. Never thought we'd see something like that, but again, different. It's interesting times that we've never come across before, with the state of the way everything is. But anyway, so there's an entry level home people are getting, and then there's that move up home that people are getting once they're selling their initial primary home, be able to use that and hopefully have made some profit to be able to buy that next home, right? And then usually people have that third, their forever home that they're going to get into. So being able to find properties and maybe take them from an entry level home, people are looking for the home that doesn't need much, right? Because most first-time home buyers don't have a ton of down payment, so they also don't have a lot of extra funds to be able to fix something up. So you want to create a product that is pretty much plug and play, right? Something that they can walk in. It's turnkey. They don't have to do much to the property. The next one, they're looking for some of the extras. They're looking for the pools. They're looking for the upgrades to the home. Obviously, going to be at a different price level, right? So being able to put that together, and then you get into that forever home category, right? And that's where you want to knock out of the park, and you're building these, $1 million, $2 million homes for people where, that's where they want to end up, and they want to show that they've made it, and they did, at least in their opinion of what they've done. So things to look at, right? Another thing too, that when you're looking for these opportunities and getting into the kind of the I don't want to say creepiness, but just the different aspects of this, is there's a whole different there's a psychology that comes into play too, right? There's a lot of things that people are looking for in homes, and there's some cultural things, and there's some religious things, and there's different things that you need to try to be aware of also, that'll help, right? I am not going to say this properly, but there's feng shui, and people, not saying that that's here or there, just saying that that's something that people look at. People look at, is it north facing? Is it east facing? Is there sun? Things like that. There's a psychology. Is it close to a school? I don't want to hear the noise. Is it close to a freeway? Um, there's a ton of different things. Do I have privacy? Things that necessarily don't pop up on data, right? When you're running a report and you're scrubbing for information, it's not necessarily going to pop up, but it's those are the people that make a difference. Those are the people that know how to knock it out of the park they're going to get these properties, because they're finding those hidden gems, right? They're finding those interesting tidbits that are going to be able to put a leg up. And when there's another home that maybe statistically is about the same, but you have that extra oomph, right? You have that extra, oh, you know what, we're designed by such and such. We're just those little extras make a big difference. And understanding that psychology of your buyer and your end user, and who potentially is gonna be living in the home, or who you planning to sell it to. If you're wholesaling, can I get an opportunity where I'm going to find these properties and just give it to it, turn it, sell it to a flipper? What's their psychology? They're just trying to make money. So quick in and quick out, right? Understanding that psychology of who's going to buy it, right? And knowing if it's at an entry level home you're building, or remodeling, that move up home, or that forever home. I mean, there's also vacation homes and second homes, and homes on the lake and the mountains and beach homes and all that other stuff, right? That play into that part as well. But those are super important things that when you identify something that potentially can be a great investment for you, right? It's always about identifying the property, identifying your risk, putting your financing together, putting together the capital, putting together the team, of who you need, contractors, painters, or designers, or staging, and all the other aspects. And those are different topics that we'll get into. But today we just want to talk a little bit about just identifying those right properties and how do we identify those properties. There's a lot of resources, and if you want to speak to us, we can share, and we can guide you through that process, and we can walk you through it. There's some sources where you can pay and get monthly membership to be able to grab data. There's Adam. There's um, Realty Track. There's a lot of different websites where you can get data, which the data is great. But again, the difference between the average investor and the successful great investor is knowing the market, walking the streets, knowing those properties, knowing those neighborhoods, knowing those intricacies, knowing that psychology of who you're gonna get into, who's the client that you're gonna try to sell that property to, and then obviously seeing those niche products. If you can find, oh, a celebrity lived here, or somebody passed away, or there's this house is haunted, or all those little things make a difference. So that's it. Just wanted to share a little bit about that stuff and finding opportunities. We're always here to help. With our financing. I don't want to say experts, but we're pretty darn close to it. We're there for investors, and we're there for being able to walk you through these process, help you identify the properties, put the financing together, and if you need a capital stack, and how we're gonna get to these big construction projects. And that's one of the topic that we're going to talk about, and then one of these next episodes. It's getting into the bigger commercial properties, in construction projects, and how do you put together your capital stack to be able to finance those deals. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's talk to a professional, talk to somebody who has your back, somebody who can guide you through, and help you be successful. Good luck to you guys. Thank you.